Today, quite surprised and honoured to have Mitch Salazar come in from the WSL. This is not something I thought was going to be happening anytime soon, and I'm absolutely frothing. So, Mitch, if there's anyone listening that doesn't know who you are, can you give a bit of a bio about yourself?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me, Ross. I appreciate it. I'm Mitch Salazar. I'll be 31 in a month, I believe. Was born in Mazatlan, Mexico, but was partially raised in the state of California as well in the U.S. Luckily for me, I have dual citizenship, so having the U.S. passport was key to me once I started traveling after graduating high school. I made the move full time in 2016 with my sister back to California, and I've been here the last 9 years. As of right now, I work as a broadcaster for the World Surf League. I also do a lot of ISA events too. Huge fan of surfing, obviously. It's something that I pursued as a professional during the qualifying series. Nothing great, but led me to the job that I have right now, and I'm just fortunate to be able to give back to a sport that has given me so much.
Tell us a little bit about your time on the QS. Obviously, I remember watching that documentary on Adriano de Souza and how, and for some reason, it's always stuck in my head. It's like, yeah, it's not a cheap thing to do. I think he said at the time it was like 50,000 US dollars to just sort of get to the events and take part. How did you find life on tour? Obviously, it's pretty bang bang bang. You got to be everywhere all the time, and it must be pretty hectic.
No, definitely. And I feel like the championship tour is basically the same exact thing, but with better events, obviously you have better waves. You have waiting periods in that sense as well. But, the qualifying series, if there's one great thing about it, is that you're guaranteed to run on the day of. So regardless of how conditions are, you're already ready to get going. And I think it prepares you, obviously, once you make it to the big stage. But most importantly, you kind of leave no doubt that you're getting everything. And that's what I personally like about, the regional qualifying series is that it just makes sure that you're getting all types of conditions. You can compete in 20, 30, 35-minute heats if you need to. And most importantly, you know how to manage time at 4, 3, 2 people heats. So to me, it's the perfect asset that you have in order to get you to the bigger stage. It is expensive, as you're mentioning. I did the qualifying series almost full time for about 4 years. I was still living in Mexico, working at our family business. We have a water sports business, so work a lot in the summertime, especially spring break. One of the better times of the year for us. Didn't make a whole ton of money, but it funded my travels. And if there's any piece of advice that I could give a lot of kids nowadays, especially with the way the system's working right now, you usually have about 4 or 5 months off within your regional qualifying series. So if you can get a job during that time, just to be able to fund things on your own, if you don't have a main sponsor, go ahead and do it, especially with surf lessons. There's so many people out there that are trying to surf now, and, you can make a decent living out of that. And especially if it's funding something that you want to pursue as your dream, go ahead and do it. But yeah, it's not cheap at all. But I think the most important part about just having that hope in the back of your mind is that it's leading to something positive for you. And if you truly want to pursue that, go ahead and do it.
Exactly. Like we're all going to end up in the same place at some point.
Yeah.
There is one definite in life. Um, so it's sort of how you want to arrive at that destination, really, isn't it? Which, as cliche as it might be, that's like briefly mentioned before. That's kind of the reasoning behind this podcast. I'm a guy from England who lived away from a surf break. Barely knew what surfing was for the first 18 years of my life. And here I am, I'll be 40 this year, trying to just get in the industry somehow, enjoy it. And yeah, you just got to go for it. I'm not the richest guy in the world, but I've made a lot of memories through surfing over the last sort of 20 years. And I've met some incredible people, and now having a chat with a commentator from the WSL. So yeah, it's pretty sick. Yeah, so tell us more. What's surfing like in Mexico? It's definitely on my list. I know that's for sure. I haven't quite got that far over just yet. I seem to keep heading towards Europe and Indo. What's it like? I'm not asking to give away any spots or anything like that. Definitely not. But yeah, I've heard some good stories and some bad stories, like everything. But yeah, from someone that's grown up there, what was it like?
Oh, it was amazing. I had a childhood that was very different to most people. I started surfing when I was 13, so a little later in life. But my older brother had already surfed for a few years, and my dad's been a lifelong surfer himself. Growing up in the place where I'm from, Mazatlan, we have real good summer swells. So good times in the summer. It's hot as hell. I can tell you that. It's right on the Tropic of Cancer, so it's one of the most humid places in North America. Yeah, it's warm, but overall, like, to me, it was a great experience. It taught me a lot about life, and of course, just appreciate everything, especially when you don't have a lot growing up. You travel by bus
Mm.
everywhere. I remember we used to go to Pascuales and take a 12-hour bus ride just to get there with a couple of transfers. But I mean, look at where it led me to. I got to meet Al Cleveland Sr. the first time ever I went to Pascuales, and eventually, I met Junior, and look at the career trajectory that he's on right now. The waves are there in the country. We have two coastlines. Really, it's the Pacific that has way better waves than the Caribbean and the Gulf. Overall, I think there's a lot of potential to get more surfers, whether it's on the Challenger Series or on the Championship Tour. Sebas Williams was really close to qualifying for the Challengers. I wouldn't be surprised that he gets a wild card at least into one event. He made his final over there at the QS 5000 in Barbados. He lost to Carlos Munoz, who, congrats to him, he's back on the Challenger. Johnny Corzo's been there. He was an ISA gold medalist in 2017 in France. Of course, Alan, everybody knows his story, an Olympian, now on the CT this year. But there's a lot of potential. There's a good amount of kids coming up. Lucas St. Bill Cassidy, who's from Los Cabos, he's got an incredible air game. I know he just got invited to Stab High. He qualified for the Challenger. He's 15 or 16 right now. I think the main thing is, just having that concept of surfers, not being good at anything rather than just that, and it's a country that is so big and promotes certain sports only, and surfing hasn't really been looked at as something that could give you a career path, or now that it's in the Olympics, it hasn't even really been recognized that much as something that should get that amount of attention. But I think we're going the right way, especially with LA 2028. Neighboring the country next door. So I see a lot of potential, and I think hopefully we get a couple of qualifiers for that event too.
Yeah, I heard it's going to be at Trestles. Is that right?
Yeah, that's confirmed. So pretty stoked that it's at Lowers. I know there were a couple different places that were gunning for the option, but I think they made the right decision. It's obviously the most high performance wave on the west coast of the U.S. and super consistent. Good time of the year, and just hoping we get waves. And I think it's going to be one of the most exciting events we've ever had on surfing. Period. Especially when you consider the kids that are coming up, the people that are looking to qualify, and if some of the veterans are still gaining their spot in qualification, like, I think it's really awesome, especially somebody like Jordy Smith, who's coming off of the win in Central America. Dude, if he makes it there, he's won there twice, and I would just really love to see that happen.
I was going to say, Geordie's not by any means an underdog, but it's almost going that way with sort of in terms of age. Like at the moment, he's probably one of few remaining surfers that when I come to surfing about 20 years ago, he was starting to gain traction. Obviously, it was just before Andy went, and so Bruce was still there, and that's when I started getting into it. So for me, Geordie's not that I was a little kid starting, but I was still there's a strong Grom inside. Yeah, watching Geordie come through on the championship tour, and he's been absolutely smashing it, and it's kind of almost upsetting to see him get this close to some of the wins. You're like, mate, you're teetering right there, but then yeah, to see him come out of that last event and he's sort of blown up on social at the moment, and everyone's frothing like, yeah, power carves are back, and this is how it's supposed to be done. And especially being a surfer as he is, he's got such a good air game. He's got some of those powerful calves in there. I'd put him with sort of Parko, Ethan Ewing, and sort of that criteria. It's incredible to see, especially being a bigger dude. I mean, I'm not as tall as he is. I'm 5'7", but I'm still sort of above 90 kilo. I'm not a small built guy, so to see someone of that weight compared to a lot of skinny little surfers, it's nice to see. Like, yeah, go on, mate, get that volume under your chest and really show us how it's done. Yeah, looking forward to seeing how the rest of his season goes this year. Can you give a little bit of a description? So, obviously, a lot of the listeners here are from the UK, and there's been a lot of change, hasn't there, in WSL the last sort of 4 or 5 years? How like the layout is. Could you give a little description between sort of the QS, the Challenger Series, and the CT, and then maybe how the CT's setup has changed? So obviously you got the mid-season cut, you've got the final five. Are you able to give just a little brief overview of what that is?
Yeah, well, it's pretty simple. With the finals inclusion, I believe this is going to be the fifth year now since 2021 we've had it. And, it's worked out. We're having a change of scenery this year in Fiji, which is going to be amazing. Great to see a left like that really shine on tour now. We didn't score last year, but it was still super fun. And I would think for 95% of the population worldwide, they're going to take any day out there, regardless of how it is. But yeah, it's really simple. You have the regional qualifying series right now. So before it used to be globally, you can still enter any event you want, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to count towards your regional points. So you can enter an event in Australia and they usually allocate, certain spots to people internationally, but those points won't count to your qualification towards the Challenger Series because you represent a certain area of the world. To me, it's cutting back on expenses. It's made things way easier and more accessible for everybody. And once again, I think the most important thing is that you're able to focus a certain period of time of the year just to qualify for that. And then if you do qualify for the challengers, you have another 4 or 5 months to be able to do that. And then the championship tour the next year. The main thing is the cut. We've had that since, the finals have been implemented, and having that sensation of knowing that your spot might be up for grabs obviously makes you compete harder. I think it's something that pushes us and drives us better. I feel for the people that do get cut, though. I try to qualify for the CT myself. If I were in that position, I'd feel horrible. But I think it's progress surfing, and it makes things more exciting, obviously. And if you do cut, the benefit is that you're able to fully focus on the Challenger Series. So that way, you put all your attention, all your economics, and everything into that to try to requalify. But the big difference this year in comparison to the last few years is the cut's now at 7 events rather than 5. So you have 2 better chances to be able to make it, and some better stops, in my personal opinion, too. I thought Sunset Beach was a really difficult one for most people that tried to qualify. It's one of the most difficult waves on the planet, if not the most difficult one. But now, finishing with the Aussie treble, you have Bells Beach, Burley Heads now, which is the event at the Gold Coast, and of course Margaret River to finish off the final event before the cut line. Those are 3 difficult events still, all right-handers, but overall they're quality waves. So if you score at those locations, you have a good chance of making the cut and, of course, competing for a world title at the end of the year.
Amazing. So, yeah. Did I hear Kelly's got the wild card for Fiji again? Is that right? Or is that something we can't talk about?
I seriously doubt it. I mean, it's the finals. There's only 5 spots allocated to 5 men and 5 women. So yeah. But I think everybody wants to see Kelly compete in Fiji. I feel like he's probably going to get a spot in Tahiti, and he can make major damage over there. It would be really fun to see him. But yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for people like that to do well in CT events, regardless of them not qualifying or being full-time members. Just look at what Kali Voss was able to do a few years ago. He made his first final as a wild card against Miguel Pupo. He obviously went on to win Olympic gold last year at home too. When you look at wild cards overall, they've always been dangerous. And I especially feel in waves that are unpredictable, that's where they're even most dangerous.
That's it. I mean, when you look at it, like coming from a training background, recovery is one of the best things you can do. Your body needs a rest. So if you got someone that's just ridiculous, like Kelly, and you go, right, mate, go have a few months of free surfing, enjoy yourself, get some good food in you, and oh, by the way, you can compete at one of your favorite spots on the planet where you're probably going to bring your A game, and you're fully fueled up, you're lethargic from traveling around, being on tour. Then yeah, it's going to be an incredible sight to see, isn't it? Just a fully charged Slater going into one of his favorite waves. I'm sure that's enough. He doesn't need to play a mind game on anyone, does he? Just seeing
But he
that
does.
name on the rash
But
vest
he
get
does.
pulled out. as much of a cool moment this is going to be, I'm going to surf against Slater. There's got to be part of you in the back of your mind that goes, have fun. I'm just going to soak up the moment and enjoy it for what it is. Yeah, cool. So moving on to sort of like a training aspect, did you yourself being on like traveling around and on tour? I suppose training's a bit of a mission. I talked to a UK shaper, Stephen, and he was sorry, it was Ben Goosey I was talking to, who's a high performance coach in the UK, and he was saying about, I think it's Taj Burrow, and he'd work with a PT and go, right, when I'm here, but I've got these events coming up. You're not going to see me. So he go full time into the training, keeping everything how it should be, trying to get more mobile, keep that strength up, keep that power. What's it like trying to maintain a certain level when you're on tour? Because obviously, although surfing is great for your surfing in terms of the technical ability, in terms of what it does to your body, you need to work on assistance exercises. Like an easy one would be internal and external rotation of your shoulder just to keep that strength there. Because unlike the opinion of a lot of surfers out there, they'll go, I want to get stronger with paddling, I'm going to paddle. You're like, yes, that's great. However, you need to protect that shoulder. It's like driving a car. You can drive your car and that's great, and it's good for the engine. It's designed to be used, but at the same time you need to keep the engine cool, you need to keep the oil topped up, you need to make sure everything's in place. How did you find trying to keep on top of that whilst you were sort of traveling around?
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent question and an excellent point because there's times where you'd be on the road for 2 months in a row and you wouldn't see your local gym or anything that you used to know when it came to training. I used to travel with a lot of small bands personally. I thought they were essential, especially for leg workouts and nothing crazy, but just making sure that you're getting your lunges in, doing a lot of squats, and of course, strengthening your hips and your lower back. So good for your joints, especially your knees and your ankles. Kevin Dean, a good friend of mine, he always tells me most things stem from your hips. So if your hips are strong, everything else is going to be perfectly fine. Especially nowadays with how many airs are landed in the flats, like your body's not designed for that. And same thing can be said for barrels, especially when the lip's landing on you when you're trying to doggy door wave or something like that. Like it's just not really essential for your body. So the main thing was just staying active, of course. But when there were waves, I try to make sure that I was surfing as much as possible, just because, as you said, like the best conditioning for surfing is just surfing, and especially paddling. Like that's the one thing that you want to make sure you're on top of the entire time. Like if I know that I'm probably going to get pounded, I need to make sure to be on the right board at the right time and paddling my ass off too. So getting that conditioning in was huge. Every single day I try to do at least 30 to 50 repetitions of squats, push-ups, and then I usually vary between 100 or 250 sit-ups the entire time too. And that's just within a regular day, just to make sure that my body's up to it. I will say I'm a bit chubby right now, way heavier than I was when I was actually competing, but just the same as everybody else. If you need to go up in volume, do that. The main thing is catching waves and making sure that you're actually enjoying yourself out there. Because in the end, if you're not doing that, what's the whole point of being grumpy the entire day after coming in from your surf? I mean, that thing's supposed to bring joy out of you and not the opposite.
Exactly. Whether it's you're a weekend warrior and it's a hobby, or if you are fortunate enough to sort of get paid in one way or another for it,
Exactly.
it's like anything, isn't it? You don't want to do a job you don't enjoy.
Yeah.
So yeah, even if you are being paid, just put a smile back on your face and make sure that you do that. I mean, yeah, that's probably one of the best things to be said for sort of improving your surfing as well. Everything, surfing or not, everything does stem from the hips. Like that is what your core training should actually be around. From your neck, inside your shoulders, right down to your hips. That is your core. It's not, sit ups are great and they have their place. But when people think of core training, they think of ab exercises. They don't think of that whole sort of encapsulated area. They'll go, right, I'm going to do all these sit ups and then I'm going to do 2 hours of plank and this, that, and the other. And they'll go and watch all these like online workouts and we're like, yeah, and then they can't stand up or even lay down comfortable for about 3 days because they got some incredible DOMs. Core training, especially in surfing, is probably one of the most dynamic movements you can do, and not even necessarily deliberate movements. I mean, okay, I've had a few wipeouts, but I've never surfed anything, any ways of real consequence, other than a couple of times in Morocco. But the beating your body takes when you get held down, you get washed along, and especially if it's on a relentless beach break. Like I have been surfing North Spain once, and just the wave wasn't letting me in. I got to my feet, and as I went to drop down, I think I was on like a 5'8", and this was head and a half double overhead, and way too small a board for the day. And I'm sort of stomping on it. I thought, yeah, I'm going to make it. And then the wave just went, yeah, no. I really sucked open hollow and just sent me straight down. And next thing I know, I'm on the sand about 100 meters away. I'm like, I can breathe. But the process from dropping from the top of the lip to what felt like the sandbar itself, and then getting ragdolled all the way through, finally coming up, no oxygen. I'm pretty sure I had a few bruises and I felt about 10 years older the next morning. But that's also a time when you need to make sure your joints and everything's in play. Like I used to do a lot of longboarding, and I'd have some pretty heavy, like double glass logs, and just the pull. Like you come off, you can't always kick out. That board gets pulled along. You got a 9'6" anchor dragging you through. The pressure on your ankle, your knee, your hip, and these are a lot of things people may not realize. And you think, well, you still got to look after that. So making sure that all your joints are sorted, like you say, having a daily or a weekly regime of just this is my minimum, this is my basic that I need to
Yeah.
do is imperative. We only get one body. It's not like a car. We go, oh, smash the wing off, right? Get the welder out, put a new panel on. Yeah, we can get new joints, but they're not. They're not there yet. Like they're pretty good, and especially if you look at the adaptive athletes that are coming through now, it's insane. And hats off to them. But you still don't want to have to put yourself in that position. You want to keep your body as strong, mobile, and healthy as possible for as long as possible. Um, when it was sort of your off season, or like a lot of the guys on tour now, what's their sort of go to with the training?
Yeah, so growing up, I played almost every single sport. I played a lot of basketball. I love baseball still to this day. But my thing was always, boxing and kickboxing. I grew up in a family that was like that. And, when I started taking it on, it just added so much conditioning and especially kickboxing. Obviously, you're working your hips a lot, but a lot of those rotations and a lot of the movements are very similar to what you're seeing in surfing. So it translated very well. It was super good for me. It also brought my confidence up big time, especially when traveling. I knew that just in case anything were to happen at any given time, I was prepared. But it varies for everybody, and I think, as you said, it might be a daily, weekly kind of thing. But for some people, it might just be getting their steps in every day, and everybody's bodies are different. Everybody's minds are different. But I truly do think that you can't rely just solely on getting things replaced or having something like that, because as a big baseball fan, Tommy John surgeries are something that we're seeing more and more just because people are trying to throw harder because everybody's better. But that surgery is basically you're taking out a ligament in your elbow and you're getting it replaced from another part of your body or from a cadaver. And it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to return the same way. Your body might not accept it. And then I think the most important part is that, if that surgery doesn't work out and it doesn't happen the second time, your career is over. So, for a lot of these people that are just looking for it as a hobby, know your limits and don't push yourself too hard either, because as soon as you start doing that, your body's going to feel it. And there needs to be progress in every element. You can't just jump from one thing straight to another. No, it's like you got to be riding the right board. You got to be on the right waves. And if in doubt, don't paddle out. That's definitely something that I'm very fond of. I love when lifeguards come up to you in a nice way and just truly ask you, like, hey, are you up to the task today? Because that's something that as a surfer, I know that I'm putting myself at risk. I don't want to put their own lives at risk either. But when you see somebody in a lineup that has nothing to do out there when the conditions are severe, they're putting not only them at risk, but everybody else too. So that's one thing that I really keep in mind the entire time. If I feel like I'm not capable or I'm not ready to kind of tackle the things out there, I shouldn't be out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a massive thing. I think COVID made a lot of people a bit more aware of that. Like, I love the fact that surfing's getting more popular and more people are coming to it. I mean, I had a chat with Bo Young a couple of weeks back, and that was a very spiritual conversation, which was great. Again, like Geordie, he was my sort of longboard idol when I started surfing. But we were saying how obviously with everything you get the two sides. It's great people are coming in, and it's great that the surfboards are just allowing more people to ride a much sort of bigger array of boards and perform better on the boards. Downside in one way is lineups get incredibly busy. Everyone wants to be the next whoever. And because you've got these epic sort of firewire mankeen boards that are super, super light, people are just charging. Like, no, it's my wave. I'm going to launch this as hard as I can and do massive air. Not only are they putting their joints and everything under a lot of strain, and they're not training like an athlete, so their bodies aren't strong enough to necessarily deal with this, but they may not actually have all the other skills around it to do this safely. Who's on the inside? Have you seen how everyone else is surfing? Like, I think that's one of the things that, and it's quite hard to coach and maintain that in a lineup, is I worked as a coach since about 2011, and you try and, especially on the more intermediate, first time out the back lessons, teach etiquette. Don't drop in, don't snake, all this stuff. But what a lot of people forget is watch how other people surf. Like, whether that's before you go in or whilst you're in the lineup, the reason you sit further down the point isn't just to wait your turn. It's that guy's really good. She's absolutely shredding. This
Yeah.
guy I'm going to avoid because that board's going every which way other than the way he wants it to. That one's paddling for absolutely everything and apparently can't look left on a right hander. And oh, there's a group of people on the inside that don't seem to be going anywhere and are going to be in the way. So if you're pumping down the line, thinking, oh, they'll move in a minute. They may not. You launch in the air, or you try a big turn and stack it. You or your board's going to go flying into them. You might land on them. There's all these little tiny things that people are forgetting because you're out there. You might only surf once a month, every few weeks, and you just want to get as much out of your surf as you can, which everyone does. But they're forgetting the small little points of, is this wave going to allow me to do this? Is the scenario that day going to allow me to surf how I want to surf? Some days you're just going to have a game of slalom and there's nothing you can do about it.
And
You've
that
just got
happens
to
to
accept
everybody,
it.
by the way. It happens to
Yeah,
everybody.
that's it. Like, there was a point of view reel the other day. I think it was Nathan Florence, and you could almost hear him going, because there were so many people out at pipe and just trying. I personally almost don't want to surf anywhere like that. Whether I've actually got the skill to or not, that doesn't matter. But I just look at that, I'm like, oh, that looks like a headache. That looks very stressful and probably a very long 6 or 7 hours if I was ever going to get a chance to surf anywhere like that. Like Snapper Rocks, any of these big famous spots that are just full of the world's best anyway. Then you've got everyone that lives around there that maybe doesn't compete, that are still absolute shredders. And then you just look at where you're going to sit in that pecking order, especially if you're a nice guy that goes, no, I'm going to wait my turn. You're probably not going to get much of a wave. There's going to be a point where you're going to have to make a decision, go, I'm going to go and I'm going to cop whatever happens. For me, I had it in Uluwatu a couple of years back, went to Bali for 3 weeks and there was almost no swell. Jim Baran, Impossibles, Bingin, they weren't working it. They were dead flat. The swell was coming more in from, where would that be? The west. So Ulu's was only shoulder to head, maybe head and a half. So you your spots around there, famous ones like green balls and stuff, they were the only ones working. Anywhere past sort of panoramas and the other side of Ulus, there really wasn't much swell. So you can imagine what Uluwatu was like. It was accessible. There was multiple peaks. And my mate was like, yeah, this is where I can surf. I was like, you sure you don't want to jump on the bike? Like, let's find somewhere else. I don't care if I go get a foamy. Like, I don't want to deal with 150, 200 people out at one spot. But yeah, so it's like I say, it's quite a hard thing to coach, getting people to do that. But that's where the training can come in nowadays as well. And this is what I'm trying to push, not push on to people, but encourage them to get their general fitness up, because you kind of got to get to that level now, especially if you go to a more well-known break. It's Easter weekend here in the UK. Dread to think what Cornwall's like right now. Absolutely rammed, and especially because people can't afford to go away. It's staycations again, like it was in COVID, which kind of coming back to the original point. There's just people everywhere. So you're like, well, if you want to catch plenty of waves, you kind of got to get in the gym. You got to get on that ski erg. You got to build your lats up. You've got to get your cardio up, because you got to out paddle a lot of people. They're all on these 5.8s that have got 36, 38 litres of volume under the chest, and they're paddling like crazy. And it's super easy for them to catch a wave. No matter what they do on it, they are still on that wave. So you need to take your own surfing up your own fitness up another notch to be able to surf and enjoy your hobby. Otherwise, you're going to sort of sit there and go, okay, I'm not catching anything. There's too many people. So yeah, we'll leave that as a little bit of a rant with crowds. But I think going back to what you said about the kickboxing and how everything's stemming from the hips, that's probably why Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu took a massive, massive increase, didn't it? About 10 or so, maybe 15 years ago. Suddenly, it seemed like half of the world's competing surfers just started taking up this sport, and there was so much crossover. Gymnastica Natural started coming out, and I was like, what even is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? I personally never heard of it, and then suddenly everyone's doing it. But you look at the movements, and you have to move from your hip. You have to drive, because when you've got a 90-kilo dude on you, how else are you going to do it? You've got your legs and your arms pinned. You might have one arm and your hip to try and get this sweaty guy off your face. You've got to move your body in some very weird and wonderful positions. Have you ever tried Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, I have. I grapple every now and then still. Still a stand-up guy personally more than anything, but
Yeah.
I think any kind of information you can get about self-defense is obviously vital to just traveling worldwide and not having to put up with anything just in case that were to arise. Yeah, I think the smooth art is what they call it, arte suave. It's beautiful. I love practicing it. I think especially when it comes to movement and freedom of movement, it's something that's really good to apply to surfing. And I think that's why gymnastica is so popular now, because it's basically
Mm.
the same kind of movements without actually having to grapple with somebody else. But it teaches you appreciation of your body, which I think is something huge. Taking care of yourself is the main thing in life. And I feel like, especially for myself, that I'm going to be 31 and I still get to surf with my dad, who's going to be 63 later this year. Like, he's in great shape. He's maintained, his shape throughout his years, just because he knows that he wants to be able to enjoy himself when the waves are good and have the capability of paddling out when it's a bit bigger and heavier, but knowing that he doesn't have to rely on others for safety. But as you said, like, making sure that you're just in shape for the conditions that you're trying to tackle, I think is huge. And having awareness in the ocean too.
Mm.
As you said, etiquette is one thing, but the only way you get better is by surfing with people that are better than you. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should try to catch every single wave while you're out there with them. No, appreciate what they're doing in the lineup. Look at their knowledge, look at their skill set, and of course, look at the way they're reading the ocean. That is a huge part of what makes surfers successful, is being able to basically predict what a wave is going to do. And that just comes down from experience. How many hours have you put out there? It's pretty simple when you think about it, but of course it's something that isn't accessible for everybody. And it's a sport that's really expensive in that sense too.
Yeah, it used to be like for me, even living an hour from my closest surfing beach, it could be just once you've. It was expensive to start surfing. By the time you got yourself a couple of wetsuits, because it's the UK, and then you've got a board, you've got the wax, you've got
Fins,
boots, gloves,
leash,
hood.
traction pad. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Like you could even back then. I think I was able to get a board shaped for about £250, and this was 20 years ago.
that was
Because
good. It's a good price.
yeah, you're right. That's a longboard as well. It's an old friend's dad used to shape, so we just get boards from him, and it was perfect. Especially for our local waves, like big 3 inch, big old 50-50 rails, like 8 inch square tails. It was the things like Leroy the Masochist would ride in Big Wednesday. Always took me back to that. That's just your Oklahoma attitude. But yeah, so you even then you still outlay £500-600, and even today's standards, like in the UK, if you're on minimum wage, that's 2 weeks' wages just to get yourself kitted out and before you spend a penny anywhere else. Now, you're gonna in the UK, I don't know, like the FRK Plus, something like that, one of the Slater design boards, you're looking at £1,000, £1,200 for a lot of those sort of boards before you've got anything else. It used to be that you could buy all your stuff and then it was all of you just load into a van or a car, get down the beach, you split the parking, you split the tea or coffee, and or you take it in flask, you take your packed lunch. You could have a cheap day out, but nowadays it's getting so expensive, especially if you want to drive that little bit further for somewhere that might be a bit more quiet, an easier spot to surf, for example. It's not that cheap anymore. But then we've got the other side of it where we've got wave parks and pools popping up all over the place, and flights to, especially in the UK, flights to Portugal are stupidly cheap. It's amazing. So you could go there for 2 days, and it will cost you about the well cheaper than it would to stay for a week in Cornwall. I think I went out there one season. I was able to get from my house to the door of a surf camp that I was working in 6 hours, and it cost me less than £100. I was like, sweet. Like, if you'd gone with a few friends, you're like, right, let's just rent a flat, we'll get a cheap rental car or van, and we'll just load everything in and do it like real sort of Grom style, just super cheap. You could get a nice cheap holiday. But yeah, it's just that outlet of surfing's getting a little bit crazy. If we'll move on. If have you got any sort of advice other than just get out there and have fun, like we said earlier, to anyone that's trying to sort of get into surfing? What would be your say top three pieces, like golden nuggets of advice?
Don't take things too seriously. I think that's the most important one. As you said, there's too many people nowadays that are trying to be the next big thing and whatnot. And, that's cool. Good for you. You can pursue whatever you want. But, you know, just because, things don't work out a certain way, you shouldn't be bummed, and I think that's why I don't take things too seriously is number one. Second is be on the right board. Of course, we talked about fitness and health and our skill set, but none of that happens if you're on the wrong equipment. Being on the right board with your skill set at that time is something huge. So I grew up bodyboarding, but I had a father that surfed. I had an older brother that surfed. So by the time I got to that point when I actually started shortboarding, it was something that was much more natural to me because I already had ocean awareness. I already knew how to navigate a lineup just as a bodyboarder. And it still took me, a good 18 months to be able to actually, get things going the way I wanted to on a shortboard. But I mean, that's a relatively short period of time when you think about it. It's a year and a half of you putting in the work at least 2 to 3 times a week after school. So yeah, make sure you're on the right equipment. And I think the third one would really just be get out there and explore whenever you can. I feel like so many people are condensed to go into the most popular break that they have close to them. And that doesn't necessarily, first of all, guarantee your success. And it definitely doesn't guarantee your happiness. I'm at a point in my life right now that, yeah, I love surfing with my friends. I love surfing, the guys that I look up to and all the time. But when I find a peak to myself and the waves are fun, even if it's a little less good than, somewhere that's way more crowded, I enjoy myself that way. So every now and then you maybe just have to put the parking lights on and make sure that you're actually paddling out where you're going to enjoy yourself the most. And that comes with traveling too. You might not go to the place with the best waves, but you're going to get waves and it's going to be fun. And especially if the weather's nice, that to me makes a whole lot of difference. Yeah, those are the three key pieces of advice that I give to somebody.
Nice. Just to extend on that last one, I think, like you were saying earlier about the QS and surfing, whatever happens to turn up on a day of the comp, condition wise, it makes you a better surfer. To be able to surf in different conditions
100%.
is the goal. And if,
100%.
like, because it was Tom Curran, wasn't it, who would almost froth over small, mushy waves and would absolutely shredding it because it made him better. And if you can turn poor conditions if you can get good enough to surf them well, you're surfing well, you're having a great time. So everyone else might go, "Ooh, this sucks. The section's not holding up." You're like, "Yeah, but you can do this on that section." And or you can try this and I just landed this. How sick was that? And it's just fine. Well, it's finding a positive in something, isn't it, at the end of the day? And that makes your day, week, month, whatever, just that little bit better. If you can carry that through anything in life, then you're winning. Positive mental attitude, as they say. But
Absolutely.
I mean, Mitch, this has been absolutely brilliant having you on. We'll call it there for this one, but hopefully maybe get you back on again. And yeah, have another awesome conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Ross. And just shout out to all the people from your side of the world. You guys got a couple of amazing surfers coming up. Alice Barton, she's been tackling the QS. Lucas Skinner's obviously the next big deal out of the area that you're from. But just Europeans overall, I feel like it's going to be a good year. And hopefully we get some more on tour. I think they're deserving of it. And hopefully we get another event back in Europe. I think it would be sick to have multiple events over there on the CT schedule.
Too right. Yeah, yeah, we got some awesome talent coming out, and yeah, really excited to see how the next couple of years go. We got some more coming up through the ranks. So yeah, time to put the UK back on the surfing map, which will be pretty awesome. But
Yeah,
brilliant.
for real.
Cool. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, Mitch. And yeah, chat soon.
Thanks, Ross.
There we go.